You're listening to Trek FM.
Want to join in the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode? Join the Babel Conference, our listeners' discussion group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field, and we look forward to seeing you there. The 602 Club proudly presents Snyder Cuts, a podcast looking at the directorial work of Zack Snyder. And I am one of the hosts here, Matthew Rushing, and with me, as he will be every single week as we are on this journey, the one, the only, John Mills.
Hello, and welcome to me. Welcome to all as we embark on this fine journey of examining the works of Zack Snyder as we... we're all excited with his coming works in 2021 and everything like that. And so that was a great excuse for us to take a deep dive look at the career of a director who's been both loved and hated by a lot of people. And so it'll be really interesting to walk through and see, what we can discover about his growth.
Yes, we're just so excited about this. This is actually the first podcast on the other side of the TFM network, the 602 Club, and we're going to be broadening the aspects of the aspect ratio of the 602 Club to involve even more things like this. And this is going to be a podcast that's going to be a short-run podcast. Actually, obviously, it's going to have a beginning and an end to it, really. And it may be getting added to, depending on what else, Zack Snyder does in the future. But we're just really excited to do something really fun like this. Before we kind of dive into the preamble about the genesis of the podcast and our first discussion this week about some of the directorial works of Zack Snyder, just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We hope that you will subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Also, of course, you can follow us, Snyder Cuts, through the 602 Club on Twitter, and we're also on Instagram at the 602 Club TFM. You can also check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM, and we've got the listeners only discussion group where you can talk to listeners from all over the world on a section of Facebook called the Babel Conference, and that is a group dedicated just to the listeners of Trek FM. And then, of course, you can find all the shows on Trek FM, which we've got not only 602 Club and Snyder Cuts, but everything else that's going on Trek FM. And if you would like to help the network make sure that all of these shows keep coming to you, you can go to Patreon. Patreon.com/TrekFM is where you can support the network. If you love what we do, we could definitely use your support. It's pretty expensive to put this network on because we have so much happening here. So again, go over to patreon.com/TrekFM and see how you can be part of the team. So, John, I'd love for us just to kind of talk about where the genesis of this came from. And, honestly, it came from you.
Well, gosh, I called up Matt one day and I said, hey, you want to do a podcast? How about Thursday? He said, no, Thursday's busy. I said, how's Friday? He said, Friday's even worse than Thursday. I said, what about Saturday? He said, Saturday works. And we had a show. No, what it is just, inspired by work that's been done, admittedly, out there looking at the works of other directors and studying their entire careers, I realized that there's an opening here specifically because, and I know how this is going to sound, but you're a big Zack Snyder fan. I know this. I also know that everybody loves to do shows on Fincher and Hitchcock and Chris Nolan and George Lucas and all of these other people. But Zack Snyder has been a very impactful director, and he doesn't get any sort of recognition. Love him or hate him, he has made an impact on the filmmaking scene and has had some terrific successes. And so it just was a natural inclination for me to reach out to my good friend and say, I'm not a huge Snyder guy. I don't hate him, but he's been hit or miss for me. You are a big Snyder fan, so it would be very interesting to have people of two different perspectives coming at it so that we could sort of understand and give voice, I would say, to everybody that might listen to it, instead of it just being a fawning love fest, this is going to be one that really looks at his work and studies how he's grown as a filmmaker and where he's applied lessons and where he's succeeded and those sorts of things. And, you were on board for it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this was a really interesting idea because of the fact that we both don't have the same exact opinion. And, I think what will be interesting is, the opportunity to go back and to look at everything that he's done. We're going to start even tonight after we kind of get done with explaining how the show works. But we're going to start with, his music videos, which is where Snyder really started directing and to kind of take a look at some of those and kind of see if we can see some things that will become evident later on in his work, which I think is really fascinating. Snyder is, I think, like you said, he has been a very influential filmmaker in the sense that I don't think that there is a bigger following in social media of fans than those that are Snyder fans. I think there has not been a more influential group of fandom in the sense of making a director, a household name in the way that Zack Snyder has. Obviously, with we've lived through the whole saga, both you and I, of like the Snyder Cut. It's not going to happen. It's never going to happen, and now it's happening, and it's coming out this year. So that. But again, I mean, this is a guy who has engendered an incredible amount of support for himself on social media. And I think one of the reasons is that, Zack seems to be a really amiable guy. He seems to really enjoy interacting with the fans and talking to them. He loves, giving them insights. His Vero account is full of pictures of behind the scenes from his works. He interacts with the fans there. He's willing to do, he does podcasts with people and YouTube shows, and he's a guy who's I think learned how to use social media to his benefit. And I think it's just fascinating to see how much of a following he has. And I think part of that, and from what I've seen of it, it's because he seems to be a good guy who treats people well. And everybody who's ever worked with him says they love working with him. In fact, Dave Bautista, who's going to be in his Army of the Dead, turned down working on The Suicide Squad so that he could work with Zack Snyder.
And that can't be discounted. It really can't. It's something that I think I'll draw a parallel here to George Lucas. Everybody that's worked with George Lucas is incredibly loyal to George Lucas. Everybody loves him. I remember the quote from Christopher Lee where he said, "I'll do anything George asks me to do except for a backflip because I can't do a backflip."
Yes, I remember that.
and it's one of those things where he does have a dedicated following. And what's interesting about it is that following is very dedicated, and people in the circles that we run in can be very dismissive of it. Oh, those are just Snyder fans or whatever. But these fans willed into existence a movie that never should have existed, a movie that the studio had walked away from. And I think also, I have no specific insight here, but I think also the fact that Zack Snyder must be a good guy and must be somebody that people enjoy interacting with and hanging around is the fact that Warner Brothers was still willing to go back to the table with him, because maybe they had a little bit of regret where they said, maybe we shouldn't have played it that way. And that is not something that you generally see in the movie making business. And so I don't want to make too much of it, but it is remarkable that there is a movie studio that's willing to give him that shot. I can see a movie studio saying to Francis Ford Coppola, sure, remake Godfather Part 3 or recut Apocalypse Now as many times as you want to. You're Francis Ford Coppola. People love you. But for Snyder to have that kind of pull. And on the flip side of it, what's really interesting is what people react to with his movies is the style. And so it really does seem to be a thing where you either love it or you hate it. It's like anchovies on a pizza. Some people love anchovies on a pizza. I say anchovies to some people and they will say, what are you? Ugh, bleh, ugh. But you can't discount the fact that they offer anchovies on pizza because somebody likes it. You know, the old album title, 50 million Elvis fans can't be wrong, right? So,
well, and I think as we kind of are looking towards his work, and like you mentioned, I think it's a really smart thing to say. Like, Zack Snyder is a person who has a style that is the Zack Snyder style. You know, like he has something to which people can identify, and you look at a movie of his and you'd be like, oh yeah, that's Zack Snyder. And, I think, part of that is that in many ways, and I don't know if you'll agree with this, but I feel like so many of his films, he starts visually in much the same way that Lucas did. Like, it's all about the visuals to him, and he is so keyed into making his films have a specific visual look. And, obviously, we say something like 300, where he's really looking to bring that comic to life, fully, in the sense of like he wants it to look like that comic, or any of his other works. It's like he specifically has this style, and so much of it is about what it looks like. And he starts with, every single frame wanting it to be something that, again, it reminds me of Lucas. Lucas has that book called Frames, where he's pulled out like 300 different frames of the Star Wars saga that he helps create. And they're just frames that he loves because of the style and composition. And so, that's so much of what Zack Snyder is known for. And like you said, people love it or hate it. And, I think it's fascinating with him as a director. And I think this is something interesting to kind of touch on as we look towards his first works here. But, he is somebody who people vehemently seem to either hate or absolutely adore. And there's not a lot of middle ground for most of his stuff. And that's what's surprising to me.
Well, and that's why I'm so happy to be doing the show with you, is because I am in that weird middle ground where we will get to the movies later, all the way from Dawn of the Dead to where his debut film, he winds up remaking one of the most beloved zombie classics of all time. And I remember seeing it I remember the movie theater I saw it in and who I saw it with, because he's a dear friend of mine and a huge zombie horror movie fan. And we had seen Dawn of the Dead and the director's cut of everything like that. So we were so excited to go see what was going to happen with it. But Snyder's sensibilities stem from where so many directors got their start in the 90s, which is the music video. And Fincher got his start there. And, you look at the career that Fincher went on to have, and he still goes in and dabbles in music videos and everything like that. And so I think it's really interesting because of the fact that I almost wonder if this very distinct style, we could probably take a look, because I know Michael Bay, I don't know specifically if Bay started in music videos, but I want to say that he did. But so many directors that we all know that have been influential over the last 20 years were music video directors. And it's hard to convey exactly how essential an industry that was to being the testing ground for somebody to get into the film industry. And I almost wonder, in a sense, what we've lost in terms of visual experimentation by the fact that those music videos are no longer the popular avenue that they were. And I know I think they still have, do they still have the Video Music Awards? I think so, right?
Yeah. I mean, they do. I mean, you have the MTV Awards, and, and they still make music videos. I mean, for Taylor Swift's brand new album. You know, she has music videos drop. It's just, you know, it's not quite the same. I don't feel like, you know, I don't feel like it has the same place in the cultural zeitgeist that it once did when MTV was, you know, the I Ching of like cool.
Yes, and VH1 was the nerd cool, I guess. That was where the nerds went to, was VH1. Oh my goodness. And you know, wow. Before we date ourselves though, you know, I think that it's fair to say that Snyder comes from that tradition, and so his strong visual style and his use of slow motion stems from that, because it was such an impactful way to make a really, you know, a heavy point in a small space in a small time, like these little 4-minute short films that he comes up from. You've really got to make a mark to sit inside. And the whole point of the music video is to sell the song and sell the band. And so in a sense, he's just selling these ideas, and they've got to make an impact and come across to you. And I think that just carries over.
It's got to come across visually, right? Like the whole thing is to make a music video to which is visually interesting to pay attention to and keep your attention for 4 minutes, you know, and or how, you know, 3:55 or whatever, how long the song is. And, you know, I think, you know, his first music video is Lizzie Borden, and it's Love is a Crime, which, wow, it's about calling 900 numbers and being in love with the woman on the other side of the phone, which... Now, talk about racy. now listen, that it is a racy video. It's one where I queued it up on the TV. I queued up the playlist that I found. I was like, oh, I'll watch Zack Snyder's music videos. And my youngest daughter was in the room, and the Lizzie Borden thing starts up, and I'm like, nah, I think I'll watch this on my phone. It's fine. Because I think people forget exactly how much they push the sexuality boundaries in those music videos. Like, wow, really, really push those boundaries. And it was interesting because it's one of the things I wrote some notes about, you know, each one. And one of them is that, you know, Snyder is not afraid of the sexuality already. And that's something that we will actually see in some of his other films. Like, you know, you'll see that in 300. You're going to see that sexuality in Sucker Punch, interestingly. Snowstream Iron, is going to have some. You're also going to obviously see it in Watchmen, you know. So like this is something to which, you know, he's absolutely comfortable with doing it, and I would say, you know, he does it relatively tastefully. It's there's nothing outrageous.
It definitely is on the line.
It's definitely I was going to say that. Like it's very sexy, and it's meant to be with this song. But another thing I really noticed from the beginning, Snyder is very keyed into color. What the coloring of the video is. You know, and obviously we know that in all of Snyder's works, which is he's very keyed into the coloration, the color grading, whether it's saturated or desaturated. He's always playing with that and using it specifically in his work, you know, and lots of people don't, you know, love that idea or use of color gradation or desaturation or oversaturation. But, you know, it was interesting to see here immediately that this video has a specific look in its coloration, and, you know, he's keying into that already.
Well, and I think that hair metal definitely lends itself to that sort of sensibility, but also I just wanted to say, because of the song's focus, because of its theme, its material, its story or whatever, there were a lot of bands that did songs about those saucy phone numbers you could call. Even Van Halen on For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge had a song called 1-900-SPANKED, which was, it's not a particularly good song. It's definitely not in their top 50 songs or whatever. But, you know, you're sitting there, it's like a Pound Cake, Judgment Day, Run Around. What is this? And Aerosmith, when they re-recorded Sweet Emotion, they had a music video about that. So this was very much a topic that was on the minds of these bands. And so I have to wonder what their phone bills looked like back in the 1990s.
Billy Joel has a song, It's Just a Fantasy.
It's
not the real thing.
Oh my gosh, you're right. I totally forgot about that one.
It's just a fantasy. Whoa,
that's a good song too.
It's not the real thing.
That's a really, really good song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. I mean, it's definitely a thing. And I mean, you can already kind of see, the use of close-up he uses, the editing style here. He is thinking very visually in the sense he's trying to create the visually interesting video he can with a music video, in the sense that, like, the way he's cutting things, the way things are cross-fading. I mean, he's trying to use every trick in the book to bring this thing to life. And then, of course, I mean, obviously you can bring it to life with a very good-looking woman in her underwear. So it's like you add all of that together, and it's interesting that you can already start to kind of see who he's going to turn into, even in just this first video.
Yeah, I would say you can definitely see the seeds already planted, for sure. Absolutely.
Well, and the next one is Peter Murphy, You're So Close, and this was interesting to me because you see the idea of the color saturation, but to me, the thing that stood out here is really just his sense of movement. Like he's really trying to make sure that things are continually moving in an interesting way to keep you drawn in. And I mean, I don't know if it really works. This was definitely not my favorite video.
No.
Of the group, but again, the style I felt like was continuing.
Yeah, I think that with one like this one struck me as more of this wasn't a great achievement sort of thing. This looked like something I could see anybody direct. There's nothing really that stands out about it. Like if I show that up there and had a multiple choice and I had 4 different directors listed up there and said, who directed this? I think by process of elimination, like Snyder would be one of your final 2, but you couldn't really narrow it down.
Well, and I think, that's what's interesting about the next video is Morrissey's Tomorrow. And this, I think, shows an evolution in the sense that we're going monochrome, we're going black and white, and this video is a very simple video, and what it does is it just helps set a time period. Like we are chronicling this guy just walking through the streets with his friends in the background behind him as he's singing, and yet I did not find this video boring. Like there's an interesting sense of movement with it. The choice of black and white gives it kind of a classiness, and to me, this also kind of shows the way that he would capture a time period. This just seems to be very much of its time, those early 90s. This is 92, so to me, again, this is one of those things where it's like this is something that he's kind of added to his arsenal. Well,
there's more camera control here. It's definitely and I think what's important about that is that it shows that he adapts to the material. He doesn't adapt the material to him. He says, okay, what can I bring to this? And I think what he brings to it, and this is something that Snyder, I think, should always be given credit for, whether you love or hate his style or anything. I think what stands out in the Morrissey video is he uses depth of field extremely well. There's a very controlled camera movement, but the camera is always in your eye never travels from Morrissey, even though you're aware of everything else that's going on in the background. So it keeps its focus. And I'm not talking about the mechanical focus of the camera. I'm saying your focus is always where it should be while a ton of stuff is going on. And I think that's a very important skill for a director to have, especially when they come to film, is you need to be able to see what's going on in frame and make sense of it. And so this screams to me, this is a director who has that skill.
Well, and I think you mentioning that reminds me of, the fact that Snyder's action always looks good. And part of that is his ability to make sure that you're focused in the right area without making it just so obvious in the sense of like, look here, it's like the way he stages the action, the way he shoots the action allows him to be able to create a sense of, where you should be looking visually, and yet the entire frame is always interesting.
Well, you know what? I think what you're hitting on here is what's interesting is in terms of his depth of field. And you wouldn't see this really in a music video, but a cheat that's used a fair amount. I really rag on Star Trek: The Motion Picture for this a lot. Is the split diopter shot where they can keep the front and the backgrounds, the fore and the backgrounds, in simultaneous focus while having that little blurry spot, in center or anything like that. And Snyder never relies on a trick like that. Snyder's always able to pull focus, or whoever's working with him, he's always able to get the DP to pull focus in such a way that he doesn't need to rely on keeping everything in crystal clear focus, which is also something you saw with a lot of music videos, was everybody was always in perfect focus and there wasn't that depth of field going on. So, I know I sound like a broken record, but it really is impressive in this video. This Morrissey video is impressive for what it is.
I think what makes it so interesting, it feels so deceptively simple, and yet it's not, because this also is kind of a oneer. It looks like a oneer, so that's like a 4-minute runner of just one shot. And I'm sure that there are probably some cuts in there somewhere, but it looks seamless. And that's a visual achievement too for, it's a music video, but we're really trying to give it some artistic merit here. And,
right.
So far I would say this is the best of the group. His next one is Soul Asylum, Somebody to Shove, which is a weird
I loved
name.
This song back in the day.
Yeah.
I really did. I loved this song. I still kind of do. But it's, it's a Soul Asylum video. There's some interesting stuff going on and the camera angles and stuff like that. You could make an argument. You can see Snyder, but this is the type of thing that I'm watching while I'm waiting for Prince's new video to come on or something like, because I know Prince's video is it's going to be a saucy thing that I want to watch sort of thing as a teenager. But like, this is just like, oh, okay. Yeah, all right. He's bouncing around singing,
Well, and this one, to me, was him starting to kind of use visual imagery to tell a story, just visually, like you have those scenes that you see playing out and kind of starting to do that a little bit. It's not really my favorite of the group, but I mean, I thought that there was some interesting progression in the sense that this is one of those music videos where there are those like strange images that are happening that are trying to kind of tell a little bit of a story going with the song and combining those two things together.
But that's what's, I think, underwhelming from my perspective is, it's him approaching it, but this sort of micro tableau is, maybe it's a step on the path for him, but the micro tableau like this was fairly common. It came into more and more play, and it underwhelms because the impression is that there's a story I'd rather pay attention to that the micro tableaus are suggesting than seeing the lead singer of Soul Asylum bounce around. So,
yep, I'm right there with you. And interestingly enough, we get ZZ Top with World of Swirl, which is a song that's actually from a soundtrack to a movie called In the Army Now, which, John, you remember that Pauly Shore and Andy Dick joint. So
I remember the ads for it, and I also remember that I was wise enough, even as a young lad, not to spend money on Pauly Shore movies. So,
well, and what's interesting about the video is that you have basically ZZ Top in concert. And so Snyder's mixed that with parts of the movie to kind of try and create some kind of cohesiveness. But, I mean, it is what it is in the sense that, like, there's not a ton that you can do with a music video to a movie. A movie soundtrack song, and there's just not a ton you can do with that because it's really just meant to be promo for the movie on
Right.
VH1 or MTV, and I mean it is what it is. The song was kind of fun itself, like ZZ Top was the song was fun, but as to this really, I think adding too much to what we see for Snyder, I don't think this is really one of those.
Yeah, you could maybe make an argument that the saturations that are in the concert footage, you could say, okay, because there's a really very dominant, really rich saturation going on. So maybe he was just like, okay, I got to pay the bills, but I can at least make these shots look interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the complete opposite of that is, Rod Stewart's Leave Virginia Alone, which this is really where I think obviously we start to see slow-mo, we start to see the different saturations. You can really see some of that imagery that almost kind of reminds me of some of the things he's going to do in BVS, with the way that he uses slow-mo, the way that he uses the camera, and again, like the different saturations and everything. This was actually one of the most impressive to me, with just the look and the feel of it, and it really feeling like, okay, we're in 1995 now, and Snyder has kind of like latched on to something that I really can see like him as the filmmaker he's going to become.
This is the type of video that just says to me, I think you've hit everything on the head there, so I don't really have anything like of great depth to add, except to say that videos like this speak to me about artists who spoke with the director of the music video and were down with the vision of it, right? You look at the ZZ Top one, and that's an assignment. That's a do this, and you need to use this footage. Okay. This is the type of video that says he sat down and they discussed it, and he said, I'm thinking of doing this, and this is what this is where I think we can go with it. And the artist saying, yeah, I think that's interesting. Let's do it.
Well, and what's fascinating is that the next video that he does, the music video, is after he's directed Dawn of the Dead and 300, and it's My Chemical Romance singing Desolation Row, and this is quintessential Snyder in every single way, shape possible. I mean, even the beginning of it, where it pulls down and it's the movie theater, I was like, that's the opening shot to BVS.
Yeah, I this is the one. If this is the best one of this lot, I'll go spoilers. This is the best one of the lot, and this is the one. The minute I started watching it, I said, okay, this is the one I could pull out of this. I could play it for somebody and say, what did you think of that? And the first words out of their mouth would be, that's a Zack Snyder video. You have so much in it that is from the color palette, to the depth of field, to the way the camera moves, to the use of slow motion in the big crowd scenes, to even the faces that the people make when they start fighting. There isn't a single frame that doesn't scream Zack Snyder here. It's something to behold. This is the work of a director who is in full command of what he wants to do.
Well, and what's interesting about this one too is that it feels cinematic. Like this one, I mean, and this is where obviously music videos really went to this whole thing of it feels like some sort of cinematic journey that you're going to go on. And even though we have the band playing in this one, the story that's being told by where they are, and it's the grunge, it's the punk rock band playing, and you've got the sold out show, and everybody just starts banging into one another, and then it turns into a fight, and like all of these things. But like you mentioned, it's that saturation palette. Like he's played around specifically with the colorization of this to get exactly what he wants. And it's like quintessentially Zack Snyder in the sense that it just is tweaked like, like it's so good. And what that does is it fits the band, it fits the feel, like it fits perfectly with what you're kind of going for. And like you said with, Rod Stewart, this feels like something that they had talked through I'm sure these guys had to have seen like 300 and been like, yeah, we want that guy directing our video.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I mean, this is, I think, a brilliant video, from beginning to finish. It tells a story. It successfully does it. And it has it's fun to watch. It's a short film. And as a result, it's just fun to watch. And there's even that sense of that wink at the audience of just saying, of basically admitting we're all in on the sub-reality here. And in terms of that sub-reality is what I think this really reveals is Snyder coming to that hyper-realistic style that was very popular with artists as the settlers moved out into the American West. It wasn't realism, it was hyper-realism. It was this idealized realism, and not idealized in the sense of I'm presenting an idealistic view of anything, but a very obviously manipulated reality. There are these terrific paintings from the era where, from the expansion era, where they are just stunning, but you know that what you're looking at couldn't exist in reality because the colors are too sharp and too off and accentuated. And so that's really, I mean, this is, if I'm going to watch a Zack Snyder movie, this is what I expect to see. This is why I want to see what he's doing.
And I really like what you're saying there because it makes you, it helps you understand, I think, why, especially when we get to his superhero films, is that he's not afraid to use that type of style. And in some ways, he's trying to create an art form. He's trying to use art to tell the story. It's not just we're going to put this on screen. There's a real sense of like we want to create something artistic. And it might not work for everyone, but we're at least trying to do something that's not just we're going to throw something up on the big screen. And this video, I think, really shows that. Now, I don't know what you made of Hanukkah, Oh Hanukkah, which was one of the strangest videos I've ever seen. With it was Ezra Miller and Dan Fogler, both from the Fantastic Beasts series. They actually did this video as a charity thing, but it is just one of the weirdest, strangest things. I'm not even sure what it has really to do, almost really, with Hanukkah. It was, and he shares directorial work here with Fogler and Miller, so it was. But there's some Snyder stuff in here, like the violence we get in it. But this was definitely not my favorite. I just didn't enjoy, honestly. I just didn't enjoy it. It's something about it just was off to me, and I just did not like it.
Yeah, sometimes you go for broke, and broke is what you get. I think that's probably the best way to look at it. So, but at least you went for broke.
Yeah.
Don't leave anything out there. Leave it all out there on the field, as they say.
Yeah. No. Yeah. So, what's going to be so interesting here is I think next week we're going to be diving into his short documentary work. Which, I mean, you've got a documentary about Michael Jordan in there. You've got a very short documentary for Superman's 75th anniversary, which should be really interesting. So, and then you've got a couple other shorts in there as well. So I think it's going to be interesting to kind of see what those tell us about Snyder, especially that early work. So I'm going to be really excited to dive into all this. And then after that, everybody will be diving directly into the films, of course, starting with Dawn of the Dead and working our way towards Zack Snyder's Justice League, as well as Army of the Dead, which are both coming out this year. So, yeah, we're going to be really excited to be able to do that. So, John, if anybody wants to talk about Zack Snyder with you or catch up with you and see what else you've got going on, where can they find you?
My nom de plume online is Kessel Junkie. You'll find me on pretty much any social network that you wish to find me on. I strongly recommend Letterboxd because, quite frankly, all the other ones are just getting boring now. So KESSELJUNKIE, that's me on Letterboxd and other stuff. And you can find me actually over on the Nerd Party Network, appearing on the House of series, the House Lights series, where, you know, we talk about different directors. And you can also find me on the Nerd Party Network appearing with you, Matt, on a Star Wars show called Aggressive Negotiations, where we do not worry about the late breaking news or the rumors about who's producing what. We go for deep dive on Aggressive Negotiations. So if you like Star Wars, I honestly think everybody would like that one. So where else can people find you, Matt?
Yeah, of course, you can find me here on the network on the 602 Club, which is our general geek show covering all of the fandoms that we love. And, of course, the godfather to this show. You can also find me on the Nerd Party Network. I'm doing Outpost with Dre Kaufman as we talk about Harry Potter each and every week, one chapter at a time. And then back here on TFM doing Literary Treks and The Orb with Chris Jones. Literary Treks is about the books and the comics of Star Trek. And then, of course, The Orb is about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And if you want to find me on any social media, you can find me under Matt Rushing02. If I'm on that network, that's going to be my name. But we do want to say thank you so much for joining us.
And this has been Snyder Cuts.